Hi, I'm Daisha Schwear with McGrath's Motorcycle Law Group. You probably take plenty of precautions to ensure you and your motorcycle are in good shape before hitting the road, such as performing regular mechanical maintenance and wearing your choice of riding gear. But there's one precaution that many people do not think about. I'm referring to your motor vehicle insurance. Most people believe that if someone else causes an accident, that person's insurance will cover everything. But that's often not the case. The at-fault driver may have purchased only a small amount of liability coverage, or maybe they don't have any insurance at all. To prevent this situation from happening, don't count on other drivers purchasing enough insurance coverage to protect you from their negligence. Instead, make sure you've done your research and purchased the right amount and type of insurance coverage to ensure you're fully protected in case of an accident. Your motor vehicle policy contains several types of insurance, but we're going to focus on two main types: liability coverage and uninsured motorist coverage. Liability coverage comes into play when another person causes an accident that results in you being injured or in damage to your property. Likewise, liability coverage would also come into play to cover the other driver if you caused an accident. In Georgia, every motorist is required to carry liability insurance on their vehicle. The minimum amount of liability coverage that a motorist is required to have is only $25,000 per person for injuries and $25,000 total coverage for your property damage. These figures reflect the maximum amount that the insurance company will pay towards the claim, no matter the injuries or damage to your vehicle. And more often than not, $25,000 is not nearly enough. For example, let's say another driver causes an accident and that driver only carries the minimum state liability limits of $25,000. You're injured and transported to the hospital by ambulance, have to get surgery, go through physical therapy, and when all is said and done, let's say your bills total a conservative $60,000. Because of your injuries, you're also out of work for 6 weeks, during which time you use up all of your paid leave and go several weeks without any income. Even though you have hefty medical bills and were out of work for an extended period of time, the most the other driver's insurance company will ever pay out to you is $25,000. That's not even enough money to cover your bills, much less to compensate you for your injuries and your lost wages. To protect yourself from this happening, make sure you purchase uninsured motorist coverage. This type of coverage protects you if the at-fault driver has no insurance on their vehicle, or even if they simply do not have enough insurance to cover the damages. In Georgia, insurance companies are required to offer you uninsured motorist coverage when you first purchase the policy. However, the insurance company will allow you to purchase less uninsured coverage than liability coverage, or even allow you to waive your uninsured motorist coverage in its entirety. In both of these situations, the insurance company must get you to sign a waiver, but the insurance company often doesn't explain what exactly you're signing away. They may tell you the waiver is a helpful way to reduce your premium, but really, signing this just helps the insurance company. Do yourself a favor. Do not reduce or waive this coverage. In fact, purchase as much uninsured motorist coverage as you can. When purchasing your uninsured motorist coverage, keep in mind that there are two different types to watch out for, and your decision about which type to purchase will greatly affect the outcome if you're ever involved in an accident. The first type of uninsured motorist coverage is reduced coverage. Don't be fooled by the name. While this coverage is often cheaper, the amount of coverage it provides is significantly reduced as well. In fact, the amount of coverage you're entitled to is determined by how much insurance the other driver purchased. When calculating the total coverage, the amount of uninsured motorist coverage you purchased is subtracted from the amount the at-fault driver purchased. This means that you're trusting the other driver on the road will purchase enough coverage to protect you in the event of an accident. Let's go back to my prior example, where you were involved in an accident and the at-fault driver only carried the $25,000 in state minimum liability coverage. If you purchased $50,000 in reduced uninsured motorist coverage, your $50,000 would be reduced by the at-fault driver's $25,000 in coverage. This means, after subtracting the reduction, you would only be able to collect $25,000 from your own coverage, instead of the full $50,000 you paid for. While this is better than the alternative of having no uninsured motorist coverage, the most you will ever be able to collect for this accident would be $50,000. This is still less than your medical bills, and definitely would not make up for your lost income. The other type of uninsured motorist coverage is add-on coverage. Unlike its counterpart, this type of coverage allows you to stack your uninsured motorist coverage on top of the at-fault driver's liability coverage. This means you receive the full benefit of the coverage you paid for, regardless of how much coverage the other driver purchased. Take my prior example where the at-fault driver only carried $25,000 in liability coverage, but this time you purchased $50,000 in add-on coverage. In this situation, your $50,000 in uninsured motorist coverage is added on to the at-fault driver's $25,000 of liability coverage, meaning the most you can collect from the insurance company is now $75,000. This scenario is better than that with the reduced uninsured motorist coverage, because while there's still not a lot of coverage available, at least there's enough to pay your medical bills. But what if the at-fault driver's liability coverage and your uninsured motorist coverage combined are still not enough to properly compensate you? Well, in Georgia, you can stack multiple uninsured motorist policies under certain conditions, but they need to be completely separate with different policy numbers. So if you have a policy that covers your motorcycle and a separate policy that covers your car, you can potentially stack them together. This also applies to any policy owned by a resident of your household who is your spouse, your relative, or a relative of your spouse. Let's take one final look at the prior scenario. The at-fault driver has $25,000 in liability coverage. That hasn't changed. You have $50,000 in add-on uninsured motorist coverage, and your brother, who lives with you, also has a $50,000 add-on uninsured motorist policy on his car. This means you can potentially add all of these policies together, or stack them, and the most you can collect from the insurance company increases to $125,000. That sounds a lot better than the $25,000 in the beginning, when we were relying on the other driver to have purchased enough coverage. Keep in mind that stacking policies can be very tricky, and there are a lot of rules and other factors to take into consideration, so we do not recommend pursuing this avenue on your own. To recap our discussion, remember 3 things. 1. Never count on other motorists to purchase enough insurance coverage to protect you. 2. Do not sign anything which waives uninsured motorist coverage on your policy, or which reduces this coverage at all. Instead, purchase as much uninsured motorist coverage as you can, and be sure to read all documents that your agent gives you before signing. And 3, make sure the uninsured motorist coverage you purchase is add-on coverage. If you have the reduced by label, your policy will contain a less effective type of coverage. We understand that navigating the ins and outs of motor vehicle insurance can be tricky business, but we're here to help. We don't sell insurance, so we can review your policy at no charge and give you honest, unbiased advice to ensure you're fully protected. If you're interested in having a member of our firm review your motor vehicle insurance policy, or if you have any other questions, give us a call at 1-855-LAW-RIDERS. That's 855-529-7433.